Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to a fabulous episode of Stories Around Azeroth. I nearly said Shadows Around Azeroth, which is pretty poignant considering the content that's going on in the game right now. I, as always, am Pete Titus Creed Nethercoat, joined by the one and only levelling his mechanome, Mr. Frazley Tastic. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing amazing. I am level 40 now. I have advanced flying. It's really good.
Advanced flying at level 40. That's definitely something special.
Advanced fighting at level 40. Not advanced flying. Sorry, this mechanome needs an IQ boost.
I'm
Jesus
doing.
Christ. I'm gonna have to take that mixer away from you one day, I think. And then
Over
take
my
it for
dead
myself. Yes, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to another episode of Stories Around Azeroth. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing awesome. It's been a good day. I've been podcasting all day. Been revamping the studio all week. So it's been a fun week. Things are trying new things. So it's time to change. It's time to change.
Fair enough. It's been an interesting week. Patch fixes, bug fixes, changes to the game, changes to how stuff works. And we're just on the cusp for those that are interested of going into the mythic world first race next week.
Yes, with so much complexity, and I think there's no limit to the method that people will go to this week. It's gonna be amazing. In fact, Warcraft Radio just announced their Race for World First coverage. So I mean, things are really heating up. I mean, it's
so much coverage. Jesus.
Yeah. And did you hear? Now this does not apply for the Race for World First, but Blizzard is also mixing it up, not with Mixer, by moving to YouTube. So people are starting to twitch at what they're going to do.
It's quite interesting because from the way it actually reads, they're moving everything that's not Warcraft esports over. So everything StarCraft, Overwatch, and Hearthstone is moving to YouTube.
I even saw the MDI. So I think it's unless I'm misread, I think it's everything Blizzard is being moved to YouTube. And someone thought that it meant exclusively like anything that's community run has to be over there, and said no. Blizzard is it's just Blizzard stuff that's on YouTube. They must have some deal with Google.
So you've got to remember that I think Bellular did a good video on this, and essentially when Twitch started up, Blizzard turned around and went, well, all of your top viewed stuff is our games, so what cut of your stuff are you going to give to us? And I said, well, you know, the thing you're getting is all the viewers on your product, you know. But then they did a paid agreement for Overwatch League, and that hasn't brought in as much money or anything else as they imagined. Twitch has obviously decided to renegotiate that, but I assume YouTube's paid them more money for how much the Overwatch League is costing.
I'm speculating it has to do with all the YouTube coverage we have. We have Bellular, we have Parasynical, we have all those people that
won't have a lot to do with it in the grand scheme of things. Not just due to how the algorithm works. It's really dumb. YouTube algorithm has changed. If it was exactly as it was, like 6-7 years ago, I absolutely 100% agree that they could just turn around and add like World of Warcraft to their recommended channels and everything else, and they'd get a big knockback off of that, and it would help those channels too, because if Warcraft decides to go, well, we're going to partner with our casters, and they get Preach, Final Boss, and they get Bellular, or they get Fat Boss or Talias and Nevertell, they could add them to recommended channels, and some people click those, and it is a boost for those if they decide to get them in, because they could just be there as recommended creators, you know. But I don't know. It's a tumultuous time in the world of the internet, and this is just esports stuff, you know.
And I think it still doesn't change exclusive. I do speculate one thing though.
Yep.
YouTube is part of Google, and Google's part of Stadia. Activision has banned cloud gaming. I could possibly see this being a move to get WoW and Blizzard games on Stadia. It's a very wild possibility, but I could see that happening. But Stadia had a lukewarm response.
You've got to remember that essentially WoW would work quite easily there anyway as a cloud streaming game. Overwatch probably not so much. You need to reduce latency as much as possible. Same in Hearthstone, it doesn't really matter. But for StarCraft, Warcraft, esports, I don't know. You're gonna want to reduce latency as much as possible. I don't think anybody's gonna anybody who's gonna be at that top esports level is gonna use a Stadia anyway. Not when that top level is gonna have a busting ass PC anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, esports is definitely not why we're here. Well, why we're here. I just thought it's interesting, all the movement going around with it. I mean, it's definitely exciting for you and me because we are streamers. So any streaming news like this could mean competition. Like Twitch has been going gangbusters with some of their stuff after Mixer. So yeah, it's going to heat up.
It is interesting in the sort of thing. I think it's more interesting from the point that Twitch is getting competition because bigger names are being paid to move over to different platforms.
Yeah.
That's the only problem. Like, the big companies are throwing money for the big companies to move to these other platforms, and that therein becomes why there's competition, because we're not going to be watching the main Blizzard stuff on Twitch. But here's the thing. Because it's on YouTube, so Twitch has in its TOS, you cannot live stream another Twitch stream. So now that they're going to be moving to YouTube, if they do the Q&As, you're going to have all your Asmongold's, all your Towleys, all your big. They'll be able to go picture in picture and actually live stream alongside a YouTube thing and talk about it as it goes on, rather than have it on in the background and talk about it as it's happening.
That is an interesting thing, because I had not thought about that part.
So it will definitely help the Twitch streamers as well, because that then becomes good YouTube content as well, instead of it not being picture in picture on YouTube VODs and everything else. It's interesting. I'll see how it develops, but I'm being the cynical person I am and saying that they're moving over just because that means that they can actually turn off comments and live chat.
And I could see that, because I do not look at chat. I mean, I look at our chat because we've got an awesome chat room, but I don't look at the chat of the other ones. Which reminds us,
if you do want to join us live, ladies and gentlemen, like this show and like nearly every other show, I think we haven't done one that isn't live. You can join us live at twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions. Make sure to join us over on the socials at Titans Creed, at Frazley. You'll be able to see when each of us go live and everything else. And Mr. Frazley.
Yes.
What have you done this week in the world of Warcraft?
So this week, I have been working on Goldeneye some more, trying to get that Vampira, because I see these little lovable creatures and they look so cute. Like, I saw one that was so adorable. It was on an RP server. It was like, Fowith the Destroyer. It looks so cool. But it was like a Vampira Death Knight. But yeah, I've been working on that kind of. Then in the same vein, working on Frazley, got his cloak up to rank 5. His eye levels his heart at 69. His eye levels 430. Failed one vision, so I've not gone back in because I just haven't had time to go back in and do it.
Right.
And my Mechanome is now level 40, and I'm over in the Hinterlands. So
for the benefit of those who are watching the VOD of this, I've got Mr. Frazley's. I believe it's your first run in there. So how did you find Horrifics? Because I'm obviously at a different level in terms of it. I've done more, because this is your Orgrimmar run, it's not your Stormwind run, but I've done more because my cloak's at rank 7, but I'm also at a higher item level. So I mean, what average item level is Frazley that you went in there with? Actually, you can see it, 429. So you're
429.
So you're slightly above my highest ult, because my Death Knight's at about 426. So how did you find it?
I found the visions, because of the high cost, you want to do it with people that you know. Like, I would not suggest pugging it. If you don't have a group that you're going in, I would solo it. I did with 2 people that I trust, and then Cap and I went in, and I'm not going to throw Cap under the bus, but we failed on Valeria, but that's because it was the first day on the Tuesday. So I mean, it was great though, and I still got the memories, so it wasn't like it was a waste. I just did not get the cloak upgrade, but I like that it's challenging. I like that there's stuff with it, and I think if I just need to get my dailies up because I had to go out and do more dailies to get some more vessels. Now I'm not gonna die under the bus, Capo. I love you, man.
So, the only thing I would suggest when it comes to this sort of stuff is don't push yourself to do dailies. Although now they have buffed the visions from daily rewards, they can eventually add into getting you an extra like vision key, essentially, is what I've been calling them because the names are just too lengthy and long. On my ults, I'm literally only doing the daily minor vision because it takes less than 5 minutes to get in there and get it done. On everything else, on my main, I'm doing the dailies. That's literally it. So,
and part of the reason I'm not doing the dailies is there's just so much I want to do, especially like I said with the Vulpira and the Mechanomes, that I'm not rushing it. But then again, I'm not raiding like you are, so it for me. I don't need to rush my cloak because I'll get there eventually. But
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, it looks like they've changed the way that the cloak is used on Ny'alotha anyway. I mean, I just did a normal run today, and we got I think in 3 hours, we got all the way up to the final boss, Ny'alotha itself, and the sanity loss literally only seems to be for the visions. Like, it's just you need the cloak for the carapace and the last boss. So because if you don't have the cloak, you get instantly mind controlled at the beginning of the encounter.
That's kind of disappointing. I get it, and maybe it goes up in heroic and mythic, but it is kind of disappointing that the cloak is not as big of a deal in the raid because like it's tied to the same boss. It would be kind of cool to have this thing that you work on. I mean, I can see raiders not liking they'd have to do that.
So the only reason it's worth getting as the only reason it's worth upgrading is because of the corruption resistance, and that obviously allows you to equip more corrupted gear, which as it has been changed, has the corruption gear. Yeah, so the corruption affixes is the new Titan forging of the patch. So basically what a lot of people didn't understand, they thought it was just a fixed roll, whereas it can roll from a tier 1 to a tier 3. Now that is obviously going to be based on how much corruption it gives you as well. So that's why you'll get a piece which could be 10 corruption and an ability, or it could be anywhere up to plus 70 corruption, but the ability will give you more stats or do more damage, which is why stuff like the Infinite Stars was simming so high, because if you had lots of tier 3s, you were going to do way more damage because of the extra corruption and everything else. And if you played well to avoid all the extra damage and everything else, then it was worth doing. So I think that alone is going to be the more interesting part of when we see the Mythic race next week, because the biggest thing this week is obviously the item level from the cache goes up to 470 because the stuff in Mythic Plus is capped to 445 this week because you can only do normal and heroic. So a lot of people this week, which you might have seen on Reddit or forums or anything else, the max you want to run outside of getting your cache for next week are just plus 6s, because that if you get an item at the end of the chest, it's at 445 item level and has a chance to be corrupted. So people are just spam running plus 6s. I've done a few. I got a couple of items done corrupted, unfortunately. But I've run a plus 11 this week. It gives me like a 460 in the box next week. If you want to run a plus 12, you get your 465, and then you have to run a plus 15 to get a 470 in the box. So it's up to you. Some people are running it. I haven't had time outside of doing some 6 runs and getting an 11 done. But it's fun. But did you enjoy the horrific?
Yes, I absolutely did, and I liked. Again, I like that it's scalable solo content, because I know it's an MMO, but I do like having something that I can do to get in, do it, and then I can bring people in if I know them.
Yeah,
and no, it never. We talked about this last week about having a a challenge mode where you don't get anything, but you just try to see how fast you can go. And
Yeah.
that I think would be a cool addition. But other than that, I'm really liking it.
So, yeah. So, I mean, you're guaranteed to, if you just do a minor vision and you do your 3 assault caches, you're guaranteed to get 3 keys a week to go in there. Like, I don't think that's bad at all. It's
No.
if you choose to do your dailies, then you're probably going to get maybe a 4th. I've done 4 runs this week already, and tomorrow, after I do the minor vision, I'll have enough to get another key, which I'll be keeping for next reset, because I'm off on Wednesday, which will be good for me. Yeah, it's been interesting. As a question, do you prefer? Here's the thing: if I'm on an alt, which is about the appropriate item level that Frazley is, I prefer doing the multiplayer version of the visions. Whereas if I'm on my Demon Hunter and I've done my Demon Hunter solo and I've done it with people to try and help them, I much prefer it solo because I can feel how much the health scaling is.
So is it due to your eye level, or?
I think no, it's per person it's 150% health boost on the mobs. So that's what they're expecting your damage ramp up to be, with one extra person to be 150%. But I can feel on packs that should die for my Demon Hunter in about 4.46. Like I can kill a pack in like 2 seconds, but it's just like the same packs that I can kill in like 2 to 5 seconds. With an extra person, it will take 10 to 15, and I can feel that. It's almost when you have a lot of haste and you lose that due to debuffs on a boss or anything else. You can feel when you lose that haste. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think I've done any horrifics on my ults this week, and I need to get. I think my Death Knight's at rank 4. My Priest is only at rank 1, and my Shaman's at rank 1. So
I need to run it on Intel because I've not unlocked the assaults, but I've already got them gear, and I'm at like 25 corrupted. I don't think I'm at anything yet, but I realized if I don't do anything soon, I'm going to keep getting corrupted gear, and it's going to cause me pain.
That's the thing. I mean, but remember that if you don't want to use the corrupted gear, you can always get it cleansed.
But you need stuff from the visions to cleanse it.
I haven't even looked into that, I'll be honest.
Okay, yeah, because I did cleanse some gear on Frazley before I got my cloak upgraded.
Right.
Because I equipped something, I was like, what's this eyeball that's not on my head, but it's in front of me?
Oh, right. Yeah, no,
like,
that was weird because I had that on my Shaman because it's the first time I'd seen it because I had like 2 corruption pieces that put me like above 20. Because, it was bizarre. I was like, what's this? I've never seen this before while doing my dailies. So, it was definitely interesting to come across. But,
yeah.
You enjoying your Mechanome leveling as well?
Oh, absolutely. I like leveling, and especially I like the Mechanome. I'm going to love leveling even more once we get 9.0 because I would like not having as many levels. I know time may still be the same, but I'm going to like that. But it is fun. It's kind of fun, and especially streaming. It's nice just having something that I can be weird. I can make songs. I made a song for Torloff about Ragnarok, and I mean, you can just be crazy because you don't really have to pay attention while you're leveling.
Yeah,
unless it's an iron. If it's an iron, you better watch out. Otherwise, you die.
Well, you die to spiders.
Yes. And orcs and
a variety.
Morladen.
Morladen, yeah. How are you going to do stuff like Genome when 9.0 rolls around?
That's a good question because I don't think Mike and I have really talked about that
because the way I look at it is essentially going to half your level. Kind of a little bit more than half because obviously the max is going to be 50 at that point, but it's going to half your level roughly. And so what level are you guys? You're about 70 to 80, aren't you?
Yeah, in that range right now.
So you're
Michael's
probably
higher than me because of the weed.
Yeah,
the herbalism.
I imagine that's probably going to drop you anywhere between 25 to 35. So I wonder if the quests that you'll be done in like a given zone are going to be complete and then you'll just port into an area.
That would be, yeah. Wow. That is definitely an interesting thought.
It's going to be disorientating, I think.
Yeah. And especially like not knowing not knowing where we'll be. I mean, because we're already in Northrend. We've already completed vanilla content.
Yeah.
Well, cat and vanilla.
Yeah. But I mean, you get a choice between Cataclysm, well, the Cataclysm high level zones and everything else. So that'll be interesting.
Go fishing and see Buddy. Hey, buddy.
That's it, isn't it? But yeah, what have I done? I've done so much this week. So, end of last reset, after we streamed the Stories Around Azeroth, that I got the cloak on my shaman, and I've been working on my Death Knight a fair bit. Like, I got my Death Knight from Heart of Azeroth 35, and I think it's at like 65 plus at the moment on the heart.
Nice.
Just from like doing the main story path and gearing up from like the dailies. So it's definitely been interesting to see how that does, because I've got the gear up so far that the world quests are starting to give 415 to 420 gear, so I can roughly gear them up and then, you know, maybe try and push through, get a 420 piece of thrall for the week, and then see what I feel like doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the biggest thing that I've done this week is on reset day, we went into Ny'alotha straight on heroic. Unfortunately, over on the EU, there was server stability issues, literally, so we were all playing at like double the MS that we were used to, so that was fun.
Yeah, someone here was having an issue, I think, earlier this week, with the lag. I think Ny'alotha is definitely playing with our internet.
Yeah, absolutely. But having done, I'm going to say like 95% of the instance on normal today, it is most definitely a fun raid in places. There are, I mean, when it comes to the raiding is always going to be good. I mean, there's going to be the odd boss here or there that's not going to end up working as well as you'd hope it would. But yeah. Rathian is definitely fun. It's a nice change from your standard walk-in. This boss isn't going to do a lot. And then there's a lot of trash in the instance to go and clear. Like, and you can get BOE epics and everything else. So I think there's been a lot of groups that have been farming BOE epics this week. But yeah, we did the first 3 bosses on Wednesday, and then I wasn't there for the Thursday raid, but they cleared another 3 bosses. No Ender Wing stuff, but yeah, we went in, we cleared quite a fair bit on normal today, and we got a good idea for what we're going to do on heroic next week.
Nice. And you've seen the cutscene, but you haven't finished the cutscene yet.
I haven't seen I mean, I went for the benefit of the show. I went and watched all the cutscenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen them all. I was expecting some sort of a flashback with Ishara, but it just seems to be text, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yes and no. It's partly good, it's partly not. But when do you raid? I presume you're not going to be setting foot in the raid for a while. Get close to the end, and then get Capo to carry you through to head of the curb and get your friendship Drake.
I'm looking for that, or like Porky Bugs. I'm definitely looking to hopefully get that, because I've gotten it in Legion and Warlords. So I'm holding out hope for BFA to get that Void Wing. But yeah, I will do LFR this time. I say that now, and then watch, it'll be like months before I get to do LFR. But I want to, because I got a quest for Frazley to finish it. So
3,000 Azeroth. It's pretty juicy.
Yeah. And LFR Wing 1 opened up this week. Are there 3 wings?
Is it next week? So there's 12 bosses, so I imagine that there will be 4. So the first wing will be the first 3 bosses. It'll be Rathian, Mount, and what's the other boss? What is the other boss?
I don't want to kill Rathian.
You might have to.
Oh, he's so dreamy. I don't want to kill him.
Yeah, but I imagine for wing 1 will be the first 3 bosses. There'll be a wing where you'll have the last 3 bosses, where the last boss will be Brad Den, which will be Inquisitor, and the Twilight Drake. Then you'll have the other wing, which will be the Blood, which will be the Dog, the Tentacle, and Il'gynoth. And then you'll have... the last wing, which will be Carapace and Ny'alotha, I imagine. Having Ny'alotha seems like a fun fight. They all seem fun. Raden, it seems like it's his Mist version ramped up to 11, which is interesting. I'm not sure if you ever did. I presume you didn't do the Mist fight on content.
No.
It's pretty interesting. There's a lot of information this week that I've just had poured into my brain between raid tactics and horrifics, because I've been looking at tactics to try and do a 5-wing horrific next week on my Demon Hunter, and I might have to stream that if I attempt it on Wednesday, to be fair. So
5-wing horrific. Ooh.
I want my mask, mate. I want my mask, and I want to start getting masks and stuff.
I mean, we all wear masks.
We do all wear masks. It's true, because
we turn green.
It's true. So I mean, when it comes to my horrifics itself, I said I've done 4 runs this week. I've gone down the solo path on the actual research tree. So I've got the extra damage when you're solo, and then when you die, you get the 500 sanity back.
Okay.
And then you can see chests in all the areas, and then the next step down, the one I finished with this week was when I kill an elite, I get 200 sanity back. Which is going to work out well, because I actually cleared one of the lost areas this week and got a rank 2 of the essences, which is the tanking one, so it's not one I'm ever going to use either, which is kind of annoying. But it was fun. It's definitely fun. The raid encounters seem pretty decent as well. I'm looking forward to going back in next week, because I get to do both days on heroic, so I just need to make sure I've got all my consumables in place and everything else. But I was going to stream normal tonight, but so much to do. So much to do. I'll have the stream up for heroics, definitely, and maybe the horrific visions that I'll probably do before the raid and everything else. So we'll see how everything goes.
Ny'alotha Raiders. That song. Yeah.
Ny'alotha Raiders. Is there any, I'm sure, are you aware of the bosses that are in the Ny'alotha raid?
Yes, I know a lot of them are old god based and stuff like that. I don't have a list, but I've run down it, and it seems like some really cool stuff. And I do like, as Ian was saying in the Millennium article, we're going to kind of see what effect killing these bosses in Ny'alotha is going to have on Azeroth. I mean, we're going after some pretty interesting old gods.
So
and old forces.
The biggest thing I would say is that they've done a very good job this patch of introducing some of the major mobs in the raid. Like, the last time I think they did this well was back in Warlords, where in Tanan Jungle you had the four end wing bosses appear, and that's when they spawned the rares, because they did the shout in Tanan Jungle. So you were like, oh, who's this guy? Because it was obviously just one of their boss calls from the raid. So it's pretty fun.
I like what you were talking about, how the story of BFA compared to even Wrath, how we've kind of changed storylines every time. I mean, because I've heard Wrath talked about lovingly about how you went into Wrath and the Lich King was following you the whole way through. He was you would walk in even Warrior Tundra. I remember meeting up with the Lich King, and he would do things. I would go into this one area, and the Lich King would appear while I'm questing through Northrend, and then someone was saying in one of the dungeons, the Lich King's chasing you and he's following you, and then at the end it all culminates in the Lich King.
So there is, I think the exception is Grizzly Hills and Storm Peaks. But
That would sound right.
I think in every other zone, Arthas is always there in some form of capacity. In Borean Tundra, you see Arthas when you go and deal with the necropolis above the city in the northeast. Do you see him in Dragonblight? I don't think you see him in Dragonblight. Oh, you do, because in Dragonblight you have the Wrathgate cinematic.
Yes.
So in what's the name of the one on the far east, southeast? Blimey, Howling Ford. So if you actually die in Howling Ford and you walk up to like the big keep, you see him there and you can interact with him. If you or like I think you see him, and if you walk up to him, he kills you. And there's something else, or like when you're dead, you can run there and you can see something that happens, and he kills you as a ghost, I think, as well. He can do. So there's something there. But he's in that dungeon in Howling Ford, like because he's there just before the first boss. The whole purpose of Zoldrak is to fight against the Scourge. And if you... Oh, no, there is a thing. So if you do the troll storyline in Grizzly Hills, it leads to Draktheron Keep, which there you find out that if you do that and he gets empowered by Arthas, the Lich King, and then that takes you into the story in Zoldrak. And that's where you see more Arthas there. And then obviously Icecrown is very much Arthas based and everything else. And there's a lot of interactions with him and everything else. So pretty much everything you do, and if you look at raids like Nax Ramus, there's an Arthas interaction technically just before Kel'Thuzad Ad. Then you don't really see him again until Trial of the Crusader, because that story led into the Icecrown dungeons and the Icecrown raid itself, and that's all to do with Arthas as well. But with the exception of a few bits and pieces here and there, unless you're really knowledgeable about a lot of the lore, you didn't know who the bosses were in like Hall of Reflection, the first two bosses, who were, I believe it's Arthas' lieutenants and bits and pieces like that. And then, but like unless you know Sindragosa from the opening cinematic, there's not a lot of the bosses that you're gonna have a clue about in Icecrown Citadel itself, with the exception of maybe Blood Queen Lanathel if you've done the sword quest, and that's only because she's there. But otherwise, you don't see a lot of the things. And I look at this patch, as I say, and it's just like you see Skitra in the first Autumn Assault, in the first quest line and everything else. You're obviously clued up with Wrathion. Raden in the main Heart quest is part of it. You take him to the Heart Chamber, and then he saves the Heart Chamber and goes to Ny'alotha himself. We all know about N'Zoth, obviously, and we know about Il'gynoth from Legion if you did Emerald Nightmare. So, I mean, those are your wing bosses and everything else, and it's like, that's really cool how they've tried to at least make you pay attention to this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few good mechanics, and it's nice to see a lot of throwbacks to AQ40 type mobs, and they've been upgraded and everything else, and the cultists, and just a lot of that AQ40, AQ20 kind of look with some of the mobs and various bits and pieces. It's really cool, and there's really good throwbacks and everything else like that. It's just a shame that the patch 8.3 has had as many problems as it has. Again, we're going to go back to the point, and you can look at it how you want. Like, should Ny'alotha have been like a full zone? Should everything else? Maybe. I mean, we all know that Blizzard have moved on to Shadowlands, and that explains why some of the cinematics look lackluster. But, in Cataclysm, let's have a look at like the story of Cataclysm. The story of Cataclysm was Deathwing and the Old Gods. So, the pre-launch event was Deathwing flying around the world and tearing it asunder. And all the way up until Dragon Soul, Deathwing would randomly just spawn in a zone and kill you. The amount of times during archaeology I got toasted by Deathwing was not pleasurable. I tell you that much. Because it was like, the first time it was lucky, it was find him. Oh yeah, burn me for the feat of strength so I can get it as early as possible. And then it's just, he spawned one of archaeology in the Barrens again. Yay, he's going to burn me. Hooray, now I get to run back to my corpse. But then they tried to keep as much of it Twilight themed as possible. So you've got the Bastion of Twilight, which is it's Cthulhu. Cthulhu, not Cthulhu. Oh my goodness, what's the name of his? What's the name of the ogre? Oh my goodness, I should know this.
Cho'Gall,
who's Cthulhu empowered, which is obviously Old God empowered, and then you see Sinestra if you beat it on the hardest difficulty, which is a massive throwback to an odd storyline that you might have seen if you dawdled around the Netherwing encampment and if you read a lot of the books and the lore and seeing Sinestro again. And otherwise, you've got Alakir, which is just there because it's Elemental Lords, and Elemental Lords have been referenced to work with the Old Gods and Deathwing and everything else. And there was one more raid at the beginning of Cataclysm, I think. Can't remember. But we go from that into, oh blimey, what did we go from? We went to Firelands, which was Elemental Lord again, and continuing the story of Thrall and the elements. And Firelands was really good, but again, there's only a few bosses in there. Like, the best thing they did about the Firelands and introduce you to the bosses is they made it a daily questing hub, and you interacted with some of the bits and pieces there. You met the spider boss there. You met Rylith there. And we found out more about Major Domo and List Resort when you're actually in the raid. And that finished off a storyline that you saw at the beginning of the expansion in... if you did the Highjail questing zone. So... there's that. And then we get end time dungeons, which... don't get me wrong, going to the Well of Eternity is really cool. And we're following the trail of the Dragon Soul and everything else, and we get the end story of Murazond and everything else, and Nozdormu, we find that. But we finish off the Dragon storyline, which feels like they're trying to retcon at some point, because they keep bringing them back and imbuing their power, as we've seen with this recent expansion. And, you know, it just leads into Deathwing. And a lot of the story is misjointed if you've read the Thrall book. Because we've already gone to take the Wemrest Temple at that point, and we've captured the new, like, chromatic Hydra dragon thing. But then when we start both the raid and the last dungeon, we're away from Wemrest Temple and we have to take it back, and it just feels a little bit disjointed. So I think they missed a step there. Mists had a story which went in an odd direction, but it was fun. Like, the story they told was in the side questing rather than the actual main raid. Like, the main raiding patches was all about trying to save Pandaria. Between fighting off the Shah, the Mantid, the Thunder King, and then obviously Garrosh at the end of it. Like, the story tied itself well together, and you were always interacting with Garrosh because they did the faction thing. Garrosh and Anduin were there. We were building up these characters which, you know, are both World of Warcraft specific. Like, these characters didn't exist prior to the game until they were introduced in the game and then introduced in outside lore. So we saw the coming of Garrosh all the way from TBC, all the way through to, you know, what happened at the end of Mists, and Anduin we've known since, you know, the birth of World of Warcraft, because he was there while Varian was gone. So, yeah, go ahead.
And just so I know, our Anduin's now a man. He really punched it up recently.
Depending on what form of media you look at, he's either Brad Pitt or he's not.
I think he's Brad Pitt. Yeah.
The next when we get to like the 12th Warcraft movie where Anduin has grown up, they'll just cast Brad Pitt to play Anduin. Yeah.
As long as it's not Matt Damon, because Matt Damon's been stuck in Mars. Well, actually, Matt Damon could work too.
Yeah.
I mean, Brad Pitt.
So what came after Mists? Mists was Warlords.
Yes.
Warlords had. So Warlord's story is really weird because of the way they changed the leveling structure there. So because you could go to any zone in any order and really just level as you wanted, with the exception of like the beginning starting expansion to introduce you to all the Warlords and get you to your garrison, you could essentially go wherever you wanted and level how you wanted, because was it that, or was it the one after Warlords? No, Legion was the one that did that. So Warlords still had you on a specific path, but you could. But the story was good. However, the story didn't flow through the whole thing, other than the Warlords of Draenor.
And the story seemed to end at a certain point. I mean, because when I've leveled through Warlords, I see where they're going, then it just stops at a point. And I've even heard the complaint, and I can see it. You kill your best people in the first raid as a first boss. I mean, in some of the first dungeon. You're going up against these warlords that you've heard about
so
for a long time.
we kill Ny'alotha in the dungeon. We kill Stabby McStabhand in the ogre dungeon, and we deal with some elsewhere. Like Gul'dan is obviously, we don't deal with him until Legion. They did deal with that expansion wrong with how they dealt with their main characters. It really felt like it should have been us versus, like, all of those warlords should have been pushed back, and we should have dealt with all of them as part of the last raid, you know, and just have like the whole, like, keep Blackrock Foundry, but instead of killing Blackhand, we push him back where he's forced to retreat, you know. And the same with oh my god, I'm gonna get rinsed so hard for not knowing my lore characters so much, but it's been so long since I've been there. But yeah, because you can still end the way you have done, but it's just a matter of fact of they really, like, did their characters wrong in how they did it there. And then we get to Legion, which I voiced my complaint with Legion so many times. It's the problem with Legion is because we can choose to level in any zone, there can't be a coherent story that paths through all of the zones, and they have to keep the story of each zone to itself and keep the story kept in endgame going forward. So that's why Suramar was the big thing for the first two patches. Like, Suramar's your endgame, and if you take out the daily the world quest and everything else, Suramar's the endgame, and Suramar leads into the Nightwell. But you
I think Legion did. I agree with you that, like, they didn't connect except for getting the objects, the 5 objects that unite, because then they opened you up to the Broken Shore. You started the Broken Shore, then you kind of retreat. You get your objects, then you go to the Broken Shore with those objects, and then in the same vein, you're working with your class hall, building yourself up to be like, hey, we got to go against the Legion, and we cannot fight each other for now with this expansion. Then we join forces and then go to the Broken Shore. We build up the different defenses and finally take it headfirst to Sargeras. I mean, so I see where you are, that, like, the beginning, it, except for getting the pieces.
The intro to Legion, fantastic. The Broken Shore and the story that the Broken Shore told, fantastic. I've got nothing against the story of the individual zones. Azuna does what it needs to do. It brings back Ashara again to imply that she's going to be more of a major character again. It tells the story of, like, the elves in that zone and what you're going to do and everything else, and the blue dragons as well. But outside of that, those characters are literally just used for a rep grind and to power up your artifact as a part into the Nightwell. Same with High Mountain. You know, High Mountain it's a brilliant story that tells the good story about the High Mountain Torrent and you're helping them and everything else. But it doesn't connect to anything you do in Azuna.
Yeah.
Val'sharah, great, really good, well told, and it's one of my favourite zones to level in because it tells major stories about Malfurion, Tyrande, Ysera, but it's interlocked. You know, and then and that story leads into the first raid. Fine, brilliant, perfect. It's old god themed. We get that. You're kind of tinging the surface with the Emerald Nightmare, but again, the Emerald Nightmare could have been its own expansion.
Yeah, and hopefully we return to it. I mean, hopefully we haven't seen the end of the.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been speculated like there's more that can happen there, but again, you look at Stormheim. Brilliant solo story. Go through and prove your worth to enter the Halls of Valor. Love it. Brilliant story. Doesn't connect with everything else that's on the Broken Isles. And then we go back to the Broken Shore after we deal with Gul'dan in the Nighthold, and Illidan comes up and he pushes us to get to the Broken Shore and push that front line to get through to Argus and, you know, stop them using the Tomb of Sargeras as a portal. But this is where, like, from 8.2, it's all end game story that pushes you in one coherent line.
Yeah, and I definitely see your point because you see Old God influence in certain zones throughout the intro, but we started the expansion. Certain people thought it was the battle for Azeroth, like you dirty horde, and I knew that it was. I saw it was going to where it is now, but a lot of people.
I think we all did. I mean, if you remember when we actually were going through one of the big leaks, and it turned out that the battle for Azeroth would have been for the planet rather than the actual thing, which is technically what it is because we've battled N'Zoth back at the end of it, essentially. But
yeah.
Again, if you look at and we've commented on the story that gets told in BFA and how disjointed it really feels, and I think
you can go anywhere.
I think I saw it was either a Reddit post or it was actually a dev that was commenting on when Chronicles gets to the lifetime story of BFA that you can tell that Uldir, because the Horde story focuses so much around Uldir on that continent, that when it gets around to Chronicles, Horde will canonically have saved Uldir. The Alliance will have canonically saved the Crucible of Storms because that's on the Alliance faction Isles, and we've dealt more with Stormsong and everything else. And then how are they going to work out? Who wins the Battle of Dazar'alor? Who wins the battle for Ny'alotha when it comes to Chronicles? But you've got to remember that with the way World of Warcraft works in a story type fashion, everything is stable. We start BFA with a faction war. Again, why do we go to Uldir to help the Horde deal with that? Why do the Horde come to Kul Tiras to help us deal with the Crucible of Storms? And then when we go to the Battle of Dazar'alor, why is there no phasing in the actual capital to show that there's been a war that's happened? You leave that raid and everything's as it is. Like, everything's normal. Like, there's no changes to the city to show that something's happened, other than if you finish the main story on your Horde, you don't see the king anymore. You don't see King Rastakhan anymore, because obviously you've progressed the story to that point.
And I think stuff like that they could definitely do, because you wouldn't have to do any major systems, but like you could still be in the area with people who have not done that. And yeah, I think the world needs change as you progress. I think we need to see things happen. I'm hearing in Shadowlands now, this is what they're saying, and like that as you do things, you'll see things change, and like you'll see things happen in the main city. I'm hoping that we see more of the world changing as we go along. I mean, that's one thing I've heard. Everybody says Star Wars: The Old Republic was really cool in that you saw worlds changing as you're playing. You saw things changing up as you play. I mean, and I even in Final Fantasy we saw certain things changing at times. Like you were restoring the city in Heavensward. You were restoring things. I mean, and like you saw that city in the distance, but you couldn't go to it. And I would love to see things like that come to the game to make the game feel more alive.
I mean, there are small changes they've done, but it's only always been part of the quest stuff. Like, do you remember like the original Death Knights back in Wrath? And you go back, once you finish that original storyline, you go to your faction and you're hated and reviled. Like, people throw bananas, socks, fish at you while you're walking through the city to get to your faction leader. Do you remember that?
Say that one more time. Sorry.
So when you finish the classic Death Knight storyline, you go back to your faction capital and you're reviled by all the populace there because of what happened during the Third War and all the undead stuff. So why does all it takes does a word from Garrosh / Thrall / Sylvanas, depending on what story part you're in there, and Anduin / Varian, and then suddenly all the people like you? Why are there not like a small sect of people that you could come across in the city which still hate Death Knights? Why does everybody's populace change over the course of 2 seconds? Because the ruler of whatever says they're part of the Alliance Horde, You know, treat them as you would treat anybody else.
And that would be cool. I mean, there is some of that with like Sourfang. People have like my horde who's type of Sourfang. I get occasionally someone not liking me because of that.
Yeah.
And I do hear that there is some of that in Orgrimmar. But yeah, why? There should be more variables in the text on choices you make. I mean, there already is that with your gender, your race. I mean,
yeah.
They're in your class. I think it would be cool to have like some text, because we've even seen it. Someone I think was a paladin or something. Like someone heard something and it changed how they were talked to because of that. I mean, it would be, the world needs to change to feel alive.
It does. I mean, we've mentioned BFA, and like they could have showed some pockmarks throughout the Dazara lore in the city to show that it's been actually assaulted. But go back to Mists, the Siege of Orgrimmar. You can't even visit the Undercity, like the under. It's not even called the Undercity, but the Under Orgrimmar, because they gave it a specific name, and you can't visit that outside of a storyline in BFA, and
which is ridiculous because you've been through it. Just open like this 8.3 patch has us visiting raids in a instance. Yeah. I mean, and I visit Mechanome in an instance. I mean, or
Mechagon.
Yeah, and we could visit some of these places in an instance. Just to look around. But
there were no marks on the fact that we assaulted Orgrimmar, you know?
Yeah. And there could be a check to say, like, have you gone this far on the quest line? Have you done this raid? If you've done it, then yeah, we'll show you all this stuff. If you haven't, we'll wait till you...
Like, the closest we've had to any changes in the actual game as BFA has progressed is, like, all of the small chat lines that you get as you walk around Borealis, like the war being over and everything else.
Yeah,
there are apparently some lines there if you kept the gift of Ny'alotha and you beat Ny'alotha on the character, and you can interact with certain NPCs and some you can't. There's apparently some of that in the game. But, I mean, that's it. I mean, you would have thought that something on this sort of like emotional scarring level that Ny'alotha was able to put on, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing of how Ny'alotha will, like Ny'alotha could have been an expansion on its own. I've got an idea I'm going to share with you as well in a minute as well on that. But I feel like while they're trying to get better, because of the restrictions that they have to do as an MMO, it's very hard. If this was a single player Warcraft game, and they would just keep releasing these as expansions that just tell like that it would be a lot easier to do that, because you're only affecting one person and how they see that world and the interactions, and you'd also feel more like a champion of the world because there's only you that's doing everything. But because of the nature of how the game is, then there's obviously stuff that you can't really do off the back of that, you know.
Well, I see that, but we still see instance stuff. I mean, I'm over in Warlords, and stuff is different people see different things because of, like, I chose the lumber mill. I mean, and you're still in the same area.
Yeah, but I'm not talking. I'm talking about more on a global scale that everybody could see, like Dazara Lore happened, yeah. And then once Crucible of Storms came out, because Dazara Lore is effectively finished at that point, the next raid is out. Why can't the world see the end result of what happened in Dazara Lore?
Like after they gave people the Argus in the sky. Yeah. After a certain point, I could see that. Now, even that one, I still have complaints with. I wish they had waited to show the eye. Maybe it's an engine limitation. I would have still wanted to see Argus show once I did that even in LFR.
Because that was based on when people first cleared it on that region, wasn't it? Yeah.
You saw it if you cleared it, then all of a sudden.
But how good was that as a thing to see wherever you were in the world? That is a world-changing event. That's not a pre-release patch.
And it is cool seeing Sargeras. So like they are doing it like it's cool seeing Sargeras' sword wherever you are in Kalimdor.
Yeah.
So I mean, they are doing it in pieces, but yeah, we need more of it. I want the world to feel like it's changed. It goes back to I think the cataclysm, those stupid tornadoes in Westfall need to stop. How long do those things?
Well,
need
it's
to
the same about Darkshore, isn't it?
Well, kind of. Didn't they change that with the new Darkshore? I know they kind of.
Yeah, kind of, because there's now elementals in specific positions now. So
I'm not as upset with Darkshore now over that. I mean that they kind of did it. But yeah, I'm not. Again, we're not being like. I'm not trying to be negative. I just think make the world feel alive, like you're saying. Make it feel like we're making a difference, because that would be really cool.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The Ny'alotha assaults feel good, even though they're in old zones. They feel like the world has changed while that's there.
And I loved the Legion assaults. Those were during the pre-patch. It was cool being in like old places and being like, oh wow, look at that. I mean, and they built the tech to do stuff in different areas. I think it would be cool to have this expanded, and I mean, I think they could really do some cool stuff with changing the world at different places. I mean, the holidays. I love whenever the holidays come around, the world changes.
Yeah.
And I just make this world feel even more like I'm living in it and I'm affecting it and changing, because I think that would really make me feel more connected.
I think it would also, like, if the world changes and you have casual player like yourself, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, a casual player like yourself would see things and they'd probably feel more connected with, say, parts of the world as they went through it. An RP, a player that specifically plays the game to roleplay, would have extra stuff to do, because there's different things that have happened, and they can tell stories with their characters because the world has changed because of a certain thing that's happened in the game, and they can follow the actual story and say their character has done something, and they could go to Ny'alotha and see the ruins of the sword. They could have gone to the Zaralor, like viewed it from afar and seen the resonance of the damage. They could have wandered around Borealis and seen the resonance of the sanity attack that's happening around the world because of Ny'alotha's story. And they could go to the current assaults because Ny'alotha's there, and the Mantid have attacked and everything else, and they can do RP there, and they could just tell these stories how they want to tell their stories with their character. And for a raider, it's fine. We get in, we do the content, we get out again, we enjoy the game when we want to enjoy it with our ults and stuff.
I will look up things like I mean, even small things. I looked up Kindi. I mean, I'm like, there are things that you look up and you see this happening in the world. You're like, what is that?
Well, that's how I got into the background of the lore when I was playing TBC. I got more invested and I wanted to know more. And there were days during TBC and Wrath where I'd find a character and then I'd follow down a rabbit hole because they'd be interconnected with everybody else.
And as much as we hate citizens of Dalaran, raise your eyes to the skies and observe. As much as we hate that, there is a cool thing that the world changes when you do that. I mean.
Am I allowed to can I take my eyes off the sky?
Citizens of Dalaran, you can lower your eyes now and look back at the webcam. Stuff like that is even cool. I mean,
the first time it was very cool.
Yeah, after the 56 times, they can even put a tag say, okay, show it to the player once, and then once they do it, show it to them again.
Yeah, once they've had the quest, I mean, I'm sure it was a tech limitation when it was and everything else.
Yeah,
but it's.
Oh, did you see when that 1 year DBM made it wherever you were in old Dalaran, it just would play it over and over and over again?
Yes. It was annoying. Yeah, DBM got a little bit trolley around April Fools, didn't it?
Yes. Yeah, I think kind of what we're saying is, and I'm 100% with you. When we have these patches and things, just add small little details that just make it look like something happened here. I mean, really make it feel like the world is
changing as the story changes. Yeah.
Because then when you log in for a patch, you can be like, oh wow, what's this here? Well, why is that gnome dead on the floor? I mean, just different things. I don't know why I thought about dead gnomes.
Well, yeah, but I'm slightly worried because I know when we get to Shadowlands, we're gonna be hit with the same thing. Like every continent is gonna have its own story that's tied within itself, and obviously the interarching thing is gonna be the souls and whichever covenant we choose when we hit max level and choose which covenant we want to be with. And then the souls, and then the actual prison itself, and then the prison is going to be the end. The prison will be our Surima. I guarantee you that zone will be our Surima.
I've got more hope for that. When I was at the What's Next panel, they were talking about Shadowlands.
Right.
They're talking about more of a linear storyline. That I got the opinion Ian understands what we were saying, and
I get what you're saying. I just want to interrupt. The problem with there being a linear storyline means that they're getting away. They're going to be moving away from the you can choose where you want to start.
On your alts. Your alts can go to anywhere. He even said that.
Okay, but imagine you play on launch day, and everybody's rammed in that first zone. And they'll use their sharding tech and everything else to make it feel like it's not as bad as it is. But everybody's going to be rammed. And the biggest worry I'm there is because I remember how the intro scenario to Warlords was with Tanan Jungle and how everybody was buggered.
Yeah, I can't. I've got no rebuttal that I can see that happening too. I mean, maybe they've learned about the layering that was in Classic, and maybe they're going to apply layering to Shadowlands. We haven't heard yet their launch plans. Yeah,
maybe there's a lot to come. I imagine we're going to see. I imagine the game's been in Friends and Family Alpha over the holiday period. I imagine once the next couple of weeks of Mythic World First Raiding Guns, we'll see, because the devs know that a lot of the main content creators are going to have their eyes on the world first, the race to world first, and so they'll then
Warcraft
release
3.
Exactly, because Warcraft 3's out tomorrow, tomorrow, Tuesday, 2 days.
Tuesday,
yeah, like a couple of days time for you, and then Friday for us. But I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, once that's done, I imagine we'll see the closed beta for content creators, the larger ones, and they'll drip people in if they want to, or they might keep it segregated like they did with Classic and just try and keep a bottled hype train, and with the fear of missing out and everything else. Because it's worked so successfully with Classic, the only difference is that there'll be a bigger marketing push because it's new content for people to buy.
I'm hoping that it's a larger pool, because I think it would be nice to at least have a little bit more testing on stuff. But yeah, that's my hope.
Before we go, you've obviously seen the cinematics.
Yes.
Right. Were you concerned that they weren't up to a storytelling perspective that Warlords and Legion were? Because obviously, when you beat Archimonde at the end of Warlords, you know, there was a couple of minutes cinematic of wrapping up the end of that storyline and Gul'dan going through the portal and the what's next thing, which we then saw at Gamescom. And then the end of Legion was essentially, the big sword, and it ended on the cliffhanger of the sword and the planet. And that's where we get.
Yeah.
But there's no cliffhanger of where we go next. It's over. So are you...
Yeah.
We know what's coming next because it's obviously the story's going to be told in 9.0 when we get there a couple of months before the launch, you know, with the new leveling zones and the pre-release patch and everything else. But are you disappointed?
I don't want to say I'm disappointed, but yeah, it does leave me not knowing what's coming next. And
I feel go ahead. You keep going. I'll keep interrupting.
As the WoW article said, it leaves more questions, and I agree with that. Kind of like what's...
Here's what I think. I think it's a big bait and switch, because if you go back to the first cinematic of 8.3, Rathian says that he'll attack us in the mind. And immediately we see Anduin seeing that there's a vision of Stormwind's cathedral being crushed by Ny'alotha. Now, we know that time displacement acts differently in other dimensions, which is where the Shadowlands is. So, what if the ending cinematic of 8.3 is a big mind warp and to show us that we've defeated Ny'alotha and we think everything is fine? Because remember, the Diamond King is still a pawn, and him to say everything is good, and then we disappear 2.5 years in the Shadowlands. We come back, and the Black Empire is there.
I would love that, because I don't want this. I love where they're seeing all this stuff, and I don't want that to be the end of it. So I mean, in that regard, I was disappointed. But if that is just like a whole mind warp,
it's some 4D chess that Blizzard devs will be playing.
I would think that'd be awesome. Really give the Black Empire like its own expansion after Shadowlands. Yeah. Okay. If that's how it is, then I'm thrilled. But yeah, because you're right, we do see all this stuff happening. So he has the power to do that in our minds and be like, yeah, everything's good. Yeah, kind of like, yeah, to turn off your mind. Yeah, everything's all good. La 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 la. Shadowlands. I'm coming for you. You don't even see it.
Yeah, but I think we're gonna end it on that point today.
Yeah, you're gonna be excited now.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us live. If you haven't joined us live, thank you very much for listening to us on the audio cast or the video cast over at youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions. Remember, you can join us live over at twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions, where I stream a few days a week as well. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Titans Creed or at Gaming Phoenix, depending on what you want to look for. Mr. Frazley, where around the internet can they find you, sir?
You can find me on Twitter at Frazley-tastic, where I post puns and pictures of cats sleeping. You can find me every week at gnomepodcast.com, where I talk with different people from Mount Azeroth and kind of see where they're going. And if you want to see my hijinks in this studio that is always changing, and with upcoming dance breaks soon, you can find that at gnome.live.
Brilliant stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much to Mr. Frazley, as always, for joining me again. We'll be back next week with another episode of Stories Around Azeroth. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. And as Mr. Frazley always likes to say,
be awesome.